Welcome to On Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton, your host. It's a Saturday conversation time with Gerry Hamilton. Gerry, Longhorns have a pretty good Friday. The ladies are headed to the Elite Eight after soundly defeating a Gonzaga team. I think that had some pluck to them in the third quarter, but Longhorns just laid it on them the rest of the way and won convincingly, 20-plus points. And then the baseball team, even the series with Kansas State, a 7-run ninth inning, they end up winning. I think it's 21-11, just an absurd number of runs for the Longhorn baseball team. It's going good right now. But I got to say this, and this is what our Saturday conversation is going to be about: recruiting. And it's going to be a little bit different topic. Tory Block, a top-rated running back out of Atascocita in the Houston area. Dad's a famous football player as well. He announced on Friday afternoon that he was going to commit to Oklahoma. Excuse me. And his dad did the horns down and all this other stuff. That's okay. But I got some text messages and comments, DMs, asking me, well, why didn't Texas want him, or is Texas recruiting just not going in the right direction? Well, even though Texas did offer Tory Block a scholarship at one point in time, they never pushed for a commitment in this situation. And I'm trying to – Texas still at 5 commitments on the recruiting campaign, by the way. Other teams are trying to get up there and get going a little bit quicker. I want to take some time and really kind of explain the strategy, explain the situation behind commitments like this, because Blaylock is not the only one that committed. Ethan Utley, defensive lineman out of Innsworth High School in Nashville, Tennessee, committed to Tennessee on Friday morning. Or Thursday afternoon. I can't remember. My point being, he wasn't a priority for Texas either.
No.
So how do we explain to folks that, look, these are good players? I'm not taking anything away from Blaylock, Utley, or any others. Okay, but these guys weren't necessarily priorities for Texas, so it's hard to count them as "quote unquote" recruiting losses.
Yeah, no. Those look. I mean, it's people say semantics, whatever. But look, if you don't push for a guy, then that's not really a loss. I mean, look, running back Texas it's Jordan Davison, it's Ricky Stewart, and it has been for a while. A Kylan Deere is a kid out of Mississippi that Texas also likes. So Ricky Stewart's the in-state running back. I mean, Texas didn't push for Tiger Rudden, who committed to A&M. He originally had an offer from Texas too. Some of these offers, you got to go back and look at when those offers were made. And since those offers were made, how hard did Texas push for kids? I mean, and again, that's not taken away. Tory Block's a very good player. He's actually started to fill out his frame. His father, Derek, was a really good player at Atlanta. Played briefly in the NFL, works with a lot of kids in that Atascocita area, but just not a guy that Texas pushed for. I mean, and I think if Texas takes an in-state running back this year, it's going to be Ricky Stewart. And I do think, look, the key here for Texas fans to look at too is if you're like, okay, well, why did this guy pick Oklahoma over Texas? Well, look at the official visitors list. Texas has 33, 34 guys scheduled for official visits right now. If these guys commit and don't have official visits lined up to Texas at this point, Texas really isn't pushing for those guys. And that doesn't mean Ethan Utley's a very, very good player. I mean, that was Tennessee or Texas coin flip during the season when Bo Davis was at Texas. When Bo left for LSU, Kenny Baker came in. Texas hadn't been up to see Ethan Utley. So they were going after some bigger frame guys in this class, Zion Williams of the world, and they're trying on Malik Autry. And then you have at the position Ethan Utley plays, you have Brandon Brown committed. So, I mean, that's kind of just
Josiah Sharma too. I mean,
Josiah Sharma as well. I mean, and Josiah Sharma was offered in late January, right? And so now you're starting to see guys that Texas really zeroed in on and going after. And Sharma was on campus today.
So here's my question for you, Gerry, as it relates to this. How do we communicate that? It's our job to communicate to the fan bases what's going on, right? That's what we do. Do we just have to say it on podcasts or videocasts like this? Do I have to write it? I mean, how? Because it is hard because the school itself, Texas, has offered these guys a scholarship, but when you don't prioritize them, it's kind of a lingering thing. It's not necessarily, a head-to-head win for an OU, a Tennessee, or whoever else. And look, Texas has gotten players like that from other away from other teams.
Right.
So it's not just this isn't sour grapes.
No,
It happens both ways, in for a number of reasons. My question is how do we assuage fans' fears that something's going terribly wrong or something's terribly amiss here? I mean, that's what I kind of get a little bit of I don't know. It's just concerning because the headline will read Blaylock picks OU over Texas and Texas A&M, etc. Whereas the Longhorns and I don't even know if the Aggies were really
no,
so
no, they didn't. And I think the main thing to look at is if you're a casual recruiting fan, Texas has probably offered 175 guys at some point in the 2025 class around the country, well over 100. They have 33 scheduled for official visits. They'll end up with 40 scheduled for official visits. If you weren't on that April 6th list, if you're not on that spring game list, and you're not set up for a June official visit, then some of those you just can't say offered, okay, win. That's just not the way recruiting goes. You can tell who Texas is pushing for. Just look at who Steve Sarkisian went to see in January. And the January 20th junior day, who went and met with Steve Sarkisian in his office, and then where did that staff go in January? Who did they go find, spend time with? And then look, who's been on campus? Who's coming on campus next month? And then into June. And that's really where it's at for Texas. So, other than chronologically going day by day, it's kind of hard to pick out. But just realize, let's just say 160 kids have been offered. Only 34 are scheduled for official visits right now. That number will get up to probably 42, 44. That's even a quarter of the guys Texas has offered at some point in the cycle. If Texas has offered a guy after January, then that's a guy that they like. If a guy was offered as a sophomore in high school that Texas really hasn't pushed for, you don't see an April date, you don't see a June official visit, then Texas wasn't pushing for that player. I think that's the best way to explain it.
Okay, good stuff. I wanted to get to that because I feel like somehow it gets lost in the wash there a little bit.
Yeah,
the translation does, right? All right, a couple other questions for you, Jerry, as we have this Saturday conversation, just you and I. Speaking of recruiting and the fact that Texas is at 5 commitments right now, they had guys on campus on Friday. They'll have them again today. There's the Texas relays going on. But really, the majority of unofficial visits start next week.
Yes.
And then April 13th is a really big date. Do you expect Texas to push for any commitments between now and then? Or do you think Steve Sarkisian is going to just hit that delay button like he likes to do and keep playing this out to get another chance to evaluate, another chance to look, and also another chance to actually see if these guys want to be truly with Texas?
Yeah, so I think I'm not going to rule out a couple of guys committing April, May, right before the June official visits. But, I think for the most part, Steve Sarkisian is really, look, he kind of holds the cards on the guys they're recruiting. I mean, now they have some real national battles. I'm not saying they don't. But, look, they have the last visit weekend on guys they want to have the last visit weekend on. So, I mean, look, you're not going to – the odds are the guys Texas is in battles with, they're not just going to go through the process this long and decide on April 13th. All right, I'm done now. Not before the official visit process, not before the real NIL process. I mean, now USC is making some mad dashes on some kids, especially defensively. But their back's against the wall a little bit on defense. And they have the new staff and the new D coordinator, D'Anton Lynn, and then Eric Henderson in D line. So they have a little bit of a different approach. Texas, Steve Sarkisian's always going to play a long game in recruiting. They want to use the May evaluation period to make some decisions because, look, the reality is you have 10 offensive linemen that are coming in for official visits right now. That number will probably work its way to 12. Well, you're not taking 12 offensive linemen. You're going to take 4 or 5. That means there's still decisions to be made by Texas on who they're really going to push for come June So I think that's where everything's at with Texas. I think they want Kenny Baker to get out and see defensive linemen as well. He's only seen a few kids in the state of Texas because he came from the NFL and was hired late. So they're not going to be in a rush at that position. He's going to get out and see guys. I mean, there's guys they've offered off tape in January that they haven't seen in person. They won't see in person like in Florida until May, until the spring evaluation period starts. So Sarkisian is playing the long game. Even within that January to June window, he's going to play the long game. That's just the way recruiting is going to be at Texas. And for the Texas fans worried about it, I mean, you signed 3 straight top 5 classes in a row, and this one's going to be another top 10 class. You got to hit on your 5 stars to make it a top 5 class. But nothing's changed with what Sarkisian did in 22, 23, 24, and now 25.
All right, I want to talk a little bit about practices this week. We've got some intel there that we want to pass along on this Saturday morning. But first, I want to say thank you to 2 of our sponsors, Laura Baker at Keller Williams Realty, 512-784-0505, or Laura at AndyAllenTeam.com. If you're looking for a home in or around the Austin area, or you want to sell your home and list it, Laura's who you need to call, 512-784-0505. Also want to say thank you to Mark Saunders. You're in good hands with Mark Saunders, Texas alum, 35 years of business in business as an agent there in Central Texas. If you're anywhere in the state of Texas and are looking for a good quote and one that will be stood by all the time with Allstate, give Mark a call, 512-218-8571. All right, Jerry, we're now the final 2 weeks or the first 2 weeks are under our belt in spring ball. We heard some stuff a little bit today. Offensive line continued to look good on Wednesday and Friday. The receivers are kind of stepping up now and connecting with Quinn a little bit. The edge position moving forward. What are you looking for really in week 3 of practice? They'll go practice again, I believe, on Sunday, and then come back on Tuesday of next week. What are you looking for in week 3?
I think it's the 2 new coaches now have 2 weeks working with the guys that are on the team and the freshmen at those positions. Johnny Nansen with the linebackers, right? And Kenny Baker with the defensive line. So I think week 3 is kind of big. So they've kind of got their feet wet with those guys. The players have got their feet wet with the 2 new coaches on defense. Now I think you're going to start to hear about some things developing there. Who's really taking to Kenny Baker's coaching, who's really taking to Johnny Nansen, because it's different voices than it was last year at those positions. So they're getting to know each other in January. The strength and conditioning work in January and February is not the same as when you're being coached on the field with the helmet on. That's a totally different communication in a totally different environment. So week 3, I'm looking to see who's kind of stepping up maybe, especially on that defensive line, who's meshing with Kenny Baker now, because he's bringing a lot of energy to those guys. He's bringing he's going to be hard on those guys, and he's going to see who's going to push through. So I'm looking at that, Bobby, and then also the younger corners and safeties, the freshmen, in general, who's hitting the wall? Is anybody hitting the freshman wall in week 3? Because now the install gets to be more and more. So, and you probably get a little tired legs, right? This is your first spring practice, the physicality. So who's hitting the wall is the other thing I'm looking for. But I think the number one thing is, how are the guys, linebackers and D linemen, how are they meshing with the 2 new coaches? What are we kind of hearing there? Is anybody stepping up? It sounds like Maurice Blackwell is stepping up for Johnny Nansen right now.
Yeah, a little bit. I'll say this. I think what I'm looking forward to, and I wrote this down, second-year players that need to step up or could step up and could potentially change the complexion of the team overall. Okay? Jelani McDonald is one of those safeties.
Yeah.
Okay? And more defensive players. Leonga Lafau, we've heard good things. But what about another linebacker, Darian Gillette?
Yeah.
What does he hit? Are those guys? Colton Bosick, defensive end, another second-year guy. DeAndre Moore, Jonte Cook, second-year guys. Where are they at? Trey Wisner. We already think he's going to be a player, but all of these second-year guys that are very talented, where do they mix and match in this team that already is a very talented team? All of those guys really trying to find their spots right now, in my opinion. Cook, probably the only one that has a definitive spot at this point out of all those guys I mentioned. The rest, I think they may hit the wall or go forward in these last 3 weeks as well. Because this is the middle week. There's 5 weeks of spring ball. This will be coming up the 3rd week. So I think that's going to be interesting for everybody to follow.
And I think the other thing is the guys who have battled some nagging injuries, are they going to stay healthy for the long haul this spring? Colton Vossick comes to mind, right? A guy that was we heard a lot about last spring until the injuries set in for him. So who is going to stay healthy here? The guys that have had some issues, Sadir Mitchell, right? Those guys who have had issues, are they going to stay healthy through the spring to position themselves, Bobby, to make a move? Because, I hate that they can't make the club in the tub. It kind of sounds funny to say, but you can't crack the rotation on the sideline.
Yeah, that's no doubt about that. Manny Muhammad, by the way, we're still monitoring. CJ Vogel yesterday reported that Muhammad again left practice early, monitoring a tweaked hamstring at this point in time is what we believe. And CJ learned from some sources on Friday. All right, Jerry, last little bit here. The men's basketball team, okay, Texas basketball team is going to go to the portal. Some of the players from Texas may be going to the portal. Where does this all kind of wrap up in your head? Houston lost. It hasn't been a great show. Iowa State lost just in their Sweet 16. Hasn't been a great showing for the Big 12 either, by the way. But where do you see Texas going in the portal at this point? Who do you think is for sure back? Who are the guys who you don't know if they're back? I mean, give us a little bit of some perspective on what you expect over the next, week to month, really.
Yeah. So I think it'll the tournament's still ongoing, right? We're down to 8 now. Tennessee beat Creighton, so congrats to Rick Barnes for being an Elite Eight again. Been a long road to get back to the Elite Eight for Rick's 4th Elite Eight, I believe that is. So congrats to him. I think, look, Texas is going to be looking for 2 bigs. Even though Caden Shedrick's coming back, going to be looking for 2 bigs in the portal. One's got to be more of that wall up, broad-shouldered rebounder, defender headed into the SEC. The other guy's got to be able to face up. You can't take 2 bigs and have both of them be more rebound rim protector guys. Else offensively, you're going to struggle. In an athletic league that has shown well in the NCAA tournament. I mean, Kentucky got a lot of press for their early loss, but, you look around, Tennessee's still fighting. Alabama knocked out North Carolina. I mean, it's an athletic league. Florida's only going to get better under Coach Golden. I mean, they're very good. So it's going to be an athletic league Texas is headed into. So you got to have those bigs have to be able to face up and space the floor and shoot the basketball. So then I think a big guard wing that can shoot the ball, help stretch the floor is paramount, and then a point guard. Could Tyrese Hunter return? It's not out of the question. Would Texas be better off if he didn't? Probably. He probably needs to go hit a reset button. Honestly, you can't put the ball in his hands to run a team. So that's an issue there, potential issue. And Trey Johnson is being a future first round pick. You're still not going to put the ball in his hands to run the team. He's going to play with the ball in the ball screen game, but he's not going to run your team. Cam Scott's not going to run your team. So Texas has to get somebody to run the team. We'll see what Chris Johnson looks like as a sophomore. But Devin Pryor at the wing is going to be big for Texas, how much he develops. But I think Texas is going to get 4 guys out of the portal. They would like to get another high school big. We'll see. The kid from NBA Africa, we'll see what happens there. With the NBA G League Ignite going away, he would have to go to overtime elite if he wants to go the pro route, play there for a year, and then become draft eligible. So we'll have to see what he does. But really, it's the portal that's going to make the difference for Texas, obviously. So they got to get a point. They got to get a wing, even if it's a role player, a wing that can shoot it. They're after AJ Score from Wisconsin. He could go pro. It's a very weak NBA draft. So if a guy has a decision to make on the fence, this will be the year some of these guys lean to the NBA draft, because I think it's one of the worst drafts in a while as far as depth of the draft in the NBA. So you can find your way into the first round when you probably shouldn't in this draft. Like last year, you didn't have a chance to. So it's going to be 4 out of the portal, possibly a fourth high school prospect. So you're looking at 7-8 new guys on this roster as of right now.
Kendall Weaver back for sure.
Kendall Weaver will be back, and he's going to be a tremendous. He really fits in the SEC. He's got to shoot it better, and I think he will. He's going to max out everything. He's going to will himself to have a career in basketball, similar to what Jabari Rice did, just in a different way with a different skill set. Those guys willed themselves to have a career in basketball. I think Kendall Weaver is going to do the exact same thing, and he's going to be a huge asset for the program the next couple of years, and will be a good fit defensively, because that will take some pressure off of Trey Johnson or Cam Scott being called upon in a major defensive role as a freshman. You want Trey Johnson scoring it. You want him creating off the dribble, getting shots for himself, maybe getting shots for others. But that will be big for having Kendall Weaver back.
Gotcha. You think it's doable, what you're asking Rodney Terry to do?
I think it's doable. I think Texas can compete in the NIL game in basketball. I don't think they're at a position where they're taking decisions out of the kids' hands. There's schools that are that have a little bit more to work with, but I think it's doable for Texas. The biggest thing to me is in the portal, it's having patience, but not too much patience. If you have too much patience, you get caught really kind of feeling stressed when you need that last spot filled out of the portal. It was a key spot, kind of like what happened with IT Horton last year. And then he didn't have the season you thought he was going to have, right? And that kind of puts you behind the 8 ball when like a Jalen Sellers goes to UCF or a Cam Scott, Cam Spencer enters the portal late from Rutgers, ends up at UConn. I'm not saying Texas would have got him anyways, but he ended up at UConn, and he was clearly probably the best guard in the portal last year at this point. So it's doable. We'll see if Texas can put all those pieces together. The toughest thing is constructing a roster with the timing in the portal, because if you go too quick on guys, you know there's a chance somebody's going to jump into the portal that may be a notch or two better than the guy you took. So it's all timing. Can they get it done? Yes, they're going to be young at guard, so especially on the off guards next year. So they need some experience handling the ball, running a team next year, in my opinion. That's going to be big.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about timing in portal. Coaches are learning. I mean, it's a relatively new thing, so coaches are learning. Sark has done the same thing. You know, you have to learn. Sark waits to the last second, it feels like sometimes, but that's his MO, and it's worked for him. So we'll see how it goes with Rodney Terry in basketball as well.
Hey, I want to say congrats to the women's basketball program. I mean, look, Vic Schaefer, the coaching job he's done, he's done so far this year. They're playing NC State on Sunday, on Easter Sunday, for a right to go to the Final Four. It's been nothing short of amazing to me. I mean, you realize Aaliyah Moore tore ACL last year in December. There's a lot of heavy knee braces on that team. This has been a team that's had some injuries. Obviously, Rory goes down this year. Shaylee Gonzalez in the past, obviously, she wears that knee brace as well. But Aaliyah Moore has come back really strong. But what they did that impressed me, Bobby, was, you know, Gonzaga it was the best three-point shooting team in the country. But how you limit a team from being an effective three-point shooting team against you, there were no transition threes. Texas length really gave Gonzaga issues. The Texas rotated a number of big girls, and that length gave Gonzaga a lot of issues. They didn't get to that cross-court extra pass. So there was no easy threes, and everything was high-hand closeout. There were no lazy closeouts. Vic Schaefer will only be able to go back to one or two plays and correct something defensively. That's as far as giving up a three-point shot, a clean look, that's a heck of an effort by Texas. And then Texas size. I mean, look, I'd said Madison Booker got into foul trouble. They could struggle offensively a little bit. Well, Shea Holly and Shaylee Gonzalez hit threes, but Texas size on the interior was just way too much for Gonzaga, who's big. Their tallest player got into foul trouble, but Texas rotating those bigs defensively, offensively. And look, Madison Booker had 7 turnovers, and 3 of them were more. She was in foul trouble, so her aggressiveness was taken away. So she pretty much, when Gonzaga went to a 1-3-1, she pulled up her dribble 2 or 3 times, ended up turning the ball over because she kind of lost her aggressiveness. And I think she was trying to not get that fourth foul early or not get that third foul early in the second half. But the coaching job he's done this year has been amazing. I mean, if you sold anybody, Rory Harmon's going to tear her ACL in the 12th game of the year. Will Texas be playing to go for the right to go to the Final Four? I don't know how many people would have raised their hand, but I'm guessing it's very few.
I think when we talked about it when she went down, we're like, well, there goes the season. Because that's your spark plug. I mean, we talked about that back in December, actually, when it occurred, and you and I, all of us, had the same thought process on that. It's just, hey, that's tough luck, because that's your go button, right?
Yeah.
That's what you like. That's your starter for your car. All right, Jerry, that's going to do it for the Saturday conversation here on Texas Football. Thanks again to our sponsor, Mark Saunders of Allstate, as well as Laura Baker of Keller Williams Realty. For Gerry Hamilton, I'm Bobby Burton. Enjoy a nice Saturday on this Easter weekend. Hook 'em, guys.